We got Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk, Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. Richard, I believe you're a graduate of Wesleyan, right?
Proudly.
So
yes,
was
indeed.
this sort of stuff happening, and maybe, for all I know, at your behest back in those days, setting up the sanctuary? Was that like an extracurricular activity? What?
You know, I think this whole sanctuary term, Neil, has been kind of gotten charged, and people don't really have an understanding of what it is. First of all, we're talking about the best students, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, at Columbia, at Wesleyan. These are the students that in a debate when Megyn Kelly was moderating, Donald Trump said to her, we need to keep these great foreign-born students, or even the nationally born students, have those go to Silicon Valley. They're the ones who are going to make our economy better. So the notion that somehow we're going to have these raids, and incidentally, all the universities are saying is, we're not going to willingly kind of turn over information. If there's some sort of warrant, if there's a subpoena, of course, we'll go by the law, but we're not going to make life easier to deport these kids who, incidentally, again, are the best and the brightest.
But they're
illegal.
illegal.
With all due respect.
But they're illegal. Now,
well,
Provost
no,
John
not
Coatsworth,
necessarily.
Well, obviously there must be, because they're taking extra efforts to make sure they're protected. The Columbia Provost, John Coatsworth, said, and this was sent to students in an email, that the university would not let immigration officials onto its campus without, as you said, a warrant to provide the information of undocumented students to authorities, again, without a court-ordered subpoena. So, in other words, if you suspect, Charlie, that there are illegals there, the university isn't going to lift its finger to prove the point.
Well, look, they can't have it both ways. Look, Columbia and all these other schools, as long as they're receiving money from the Department of Education, whether it be block grants or subsidized student loans, then I believe they have to comply with federal immigration authorities. Now, look, no one's talking about massive raids or mass deportations. What we're talking about is simply enforcing the law on the books. And whether Columbia University or Wesleyan and many other campuses across the country have stated this, they cannot have it both ways. They cannot take money from the federal government and be able to charge excess tuition and have vastly subsidized, college education costs, and then also go to the department, the immigration officials, and say, we're not going to comply with you. We're going to do everything we can unless you have a warrant or subpoena. You just cannot have it both ways. And I think it's about enforcing the law that is on the books. And I will say this, it's a red herring argument to talk about this is the best students, the best and brightest. Well, what if it wasn't the best schools? What if it was just a community college in Massachusetts? We're talking about principle. We're talking about the fact that these schools get money from the federal government, and it's about enforcing the law. Or it's more than that,
right? I mean, Richard, it could be people who are working at the university. It could be their assistants. It could be staff members there who are working there. And the universities know this very, very well. And we do have this thing called a Constitution, and we do have laws that protect American citizens, but not those who are not. So when the universities follow the likes of cities and whole regions that ignore that because they think that that would be intimidating and wrong, aren't they saying that we find the Constitution itself intimidating and wrong?
Neil, all I was quoting to you earlier was what the lionized Donald Trump told Megyn Kelly about what he wanted. So the notion that after he deports...
Part of it in that description was saying that they were all, aspiring technology or high-tech students. Or they might not be. They might be just others in the population there who the university is protecting.
So their crime was being brought to this country by undocumented parents. They've gone through public high schools.
But how do you know it stops there? How do you know it's not the parents?
It's also people that have overstayed visas, too.
Yeah, but how do you know it's just the kids of undocumented aliens? Why can't it be the undocumented folks themselves? We'll never be able to prove it because Columbia won't let you. Wesleyan won't let you. Whole cities like Los Angeles and New York and Chicago won't let you.
Right. So, again, all they're talking about, we're talking about after these 2 to 3 million gang members, the criminals that Trump insists are going to be the first wave, and after the wall is built, what year do we think that's going to be? Then is what we're imagining this whole sanctuary discussion becomes joined.
We can't find those bad hombres, right? We can't find those criminals because they're not even going to get to the point of seeing if they're there.
If you think they're hanging out in the cafeterias or in the classrooms at Wesleyan or Columbia,
you don't even want them to try.
No. Again, if there's reason to think that they're there and the authorities have some authorization to come in. Of course, all these universities are saying is, we're not going to make it easy for you. That's actually, if in a college setting, that's actually not the worst thing in the world to make students or employees feel like they've actually got some protection.
So they're
It's not
going, they're
against the
making
law.
people go through hoops to protect something that is already U.S. law. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, not necessarily.
I think it's ridiculous. If Columbia really wanted us to take a principled stand, you know what they would say? We're going to reject all federal funding. We're not going to take subsidized student loans, and then they would have a better argument. But they're receiving hundreds of millions of dollars over the decades in subsidized student loans and federal research grants, and then they're going to say we're going to make it very, very difficult for the very hand that is feeding us to come and do their job.
How
that is
difficult?
ridiculous, and it's completely hypocritical. It's completely hypocritical.
I just don't think it's that difficult if the authorities have grounds to believe there are people who should be deported for them to show that. That's all. It's really not.
It's about complying. It's just complying with a federal authority, and it's not just undocumented people that came over the southern border. These are people that have overstayed work visas. These are people that did not fill out the right paperwork and have defied immigration authorities. So let's say someone defied their work visa for 6 years. They go to a great school. They should be investigated. It's not just someone who was brought across the border 12 or 15 years ago. You have to have immigration laws. It's not fair to the other 7, 12, 15 million people that want to come here.
Richard's background here, because I'm not so sure.
Please.
It's looking a little shaky.
Went to Wesleyan.
I'm kidding. Guys, thank you both very much. Have a great Thanksgiving.